All right, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call our meeting to order. We'll move right into discussion and action on the minutes of our meeting from August 28th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. A second.
Motion, I have a second. Any comments, questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, the next item on our agenda is to discuss the presentations we received and try to reach a conclusion on a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to just go around the table, whatever that is, clockwise order. Before we do, though, one of the things we asked you to do is check the references. Anything we should know about the reference, your checks?
No. So I was able to speak to one reference for BFJ and two for Dodson and Flinker. And all three people I spoke to spoke very highly of both consulting groups.
Okay.
And actually, I believe all three had them work on multiple projects as well. So that's pretty telling, I think, that they were both satisfied with their work.
Okay, so is everybody ready? Just go around the table and share your thoughts and preferences. So Abby, you want to go first?
Sure. So I think clearly both groups would do a great job on this project. I think BFJ might be a little better suited for the town. I think it was very clear the amount of time they spent in Granby researching and looking through the work that the committee has already done, which I think was important. I also have a better feeling from them about kind of the analytical side of it and looking at the market analysis. And while it wouldn't necessarily be our problem, I do think having one-stop shop for all the needs makes a difference at the end of the day. But again, I think both are certainly more than qualified to do a good job, but that's my takeaway.
Eric?
All right, so Abby stole all my thunder. They believe both of them are equally as capable of delivering a product with the scope that we want. For me, it fell on the exact factor. Do we want a one-stop shop, or do we want essentially a general contractor who has to fulfill and weave together the stories from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different companies, make sure they meet their commitments, and sharing the revenue, of course, seems to be, to me, create potentials for, each one of these companies is getting a small slice of what it is that a larger piece is. I wonder where the motivation is. So, I don't know. I would lean towards the holistic approach from the single company on that basis alone.
I also would go with BFJ, although I agree they're absolutely both capable and would do amazing work, no doubt. One of my main reasons is thinking about the public workshop. I think BFJ is very organized and studied it extensively and can tell us exactly where the gaps in our work are. And I think that they can be really inclusive about getting focus groups and hearing who we want to talk to and have like kind of an idea of who they want to talk to, and people can come to us. So kind of hit the ground running from what we've already done. And my only concern with Dodson would be that it would just be more strategy, because some of what they would do, we've done parts of, and we would have to meet with them and probably redesign where we go from here versus hit the ground running. I do like Dodson's design thinking approach. I love the prototyping, but I also think BFJ, if they bring something in and they go down that road, they seem very capable. Like if we're like, one thing we did like is like this 3D modeling or whatever it may be. That may not be what everyone else likes, but I think they would integrate it.
John?
I'm mildly ambivalent about both. Yes, 100%, both can do the job. I'm not surprised that the references came back positive because nobody's going to put negative references down for the references. So I'm not sure the value of that because you're not going to put down somebody that you made angry and did a crappy project for. I apologize for not being at the last meeting, but I watched the meeting, read the minutes, looked over the proposal again, and I do share the same concern that it is a little bit divided up and that's unfortunately how things get lost in the stream. It's like, well, I thought you were doing that. Well, no, you were going to do it. And interestingly, for this, I think it shows in their budget proposal too, that their cost, and while cost is not everything, their cost is a little bit higher than BFJ. My only frustration with BFJ, and I actually made a note when we were sitting in the meeting, is they're linked, but they're similar. They almost didn't answer any question that we had, and their answers that they did give were always the same. DOT, Wilton, New Canaan, Danbury, like they talked about projects that had nothing to do with what we wanted. And I'm like, well, and if you remember, I even went back and I'm like, look, I'm going to give you another opportunity to answer this question. And they still didn't answer it. So I think the focus, regardless of who we choose, that communication, like we need to have some very specific, very granular conversations about what does this actually mean? How do you actually do these? Because, and I do like what their response was when we talked about, BFJ's response was when we talked about, all right, what's the end look like? What are you handing us besides a nifty report? What are the deliverables tangible things that we can then take and do something with? And I did like their answer to that. So if I was going to lean between the two of them for a sample size of 2, I would lean towards BFJ.
Kathy, you always decline, but you are a citizen of Granby and you got on the page.
BFJ was the first group.
Yes.
Yeah, I leaned towards them. I liked that when they came here, they went to dinner and then they walked around, but it was clear that it was not their first time here.
Okay, Marty?
All right, yeah, BFJ is the winner for me also, and I jotted down some reasons why, or some comparisons, and a lot of them mirror what has been already said. With respect to the price point, no real issue there. It's very similar. John, to your point, I know why there's probably a little bit of an uptick in Dotson's price because they're working with external collaboration. It's one company versus a multi-firm collaboration. Okay, that's one. DFJ, they addressed all the previous submitted questions that we sent out, both written, and they did address some of them verbally if we asked them. Where Dotson, they didn't really outline or talk much about the submitted questions that we put up there. BFJ, they definitely did their homework. Like some mentioned, they were here in town, so within their proposal and within their presentation, they did cite a lot of things within Granby, and you knew they spent some time here, and they did the work, and they looked at some documentation. Where Dotson, I feel as though they did some of their homework, but it was a little bit clear that it wasn't quite as prevalent as what BFJ did. And a lot of what was in Dotson's proposal, there was a lot of boilerplate stuff in there. A lot of it wasn't tailored to Granby, where BFJ spent a little more time in doing that. With respect to public engagement, I actually got the feeling that BFJ would do a little bit of a less emphasis on public engagement, and a little bit more of a limited approach to public engagement, and maybe give slightly more emphasis on stakeholder input, businesses and stuff in town. I thought Dotson might do, more of an emphasis on public engagement, and to create, an emphasis on the visual and the modeling creation of, what the town can look like, so that people have something to look at and to interact with. So there's, a little bit of a slight difference there. But also BFJ did nod more to us about what's already been done within the public engagement. So I think they felt as though they could back off from the public engagement part. So I was okay with that. Conceptual design and visual strengths, I think both firms are adequate enough in doing that. Probably Dotson and Flickr maybe a little bit more. I think that's something that they like to do. And why they probably farm out some of the other specialties. The nice thing about BFJ is they have all that in-house. So it shows that the depth of their firm, I think, is a little bit deeper because they employ those silo specialties, which I think, it can be a good thing when you look at getting feedback and reports from one firm versus multiple firms where stuff is filtered up through the one project management team. With respect to underlying zoning and regulations, I think more emphasis was put on that by BFJ. And I think they also tipped the hat a little bit by saying that they would be willing to present, or not present, but prepare information for us to be presented to various boards and commissions for input and change to regulations. They stopped short of presenting, of course, but would if the contract could be amended and we were okay with the fee. Where with Dotson, I don't feel that zoning and regulations were really not an emphasis. But they would engage more in that, but under a separate amendment underneath the project scope. BFJ, I think, repeatedly referenced our POCD or their POCD work that they've done with municipalities within the region. And kind of offering assistance with us or to us to help prepare or to have it as kind of a kickstart to the next 10-year POC that we're going to be doing, which probably will kick off within the next 12 months. So this I feel is somewhat important, but can't dwell on it too much because it wasn't part of the project scope. It wasn't, we really didn't talk about that. Where Dotson, I think there was minimal reference to the plan of conservation and development. And they really didn't show that within their portfolio of work like BFJ did. BFJ did emphasize the POCD work that they've done. Dotson didn't see any, but I think some of their collaborating firms did reference some of the POCD work that they did. So I think there's a strength there with BFJ. With respect to staff and committee interaction and coordination, sometimes it's more difficult to work on a multi-level specialty project where the information is gathered externally from the lead firm or to the lead firm, and then going up through the lead firm, and then waiting for answers to be gathered versus when it's all in one shop, and you just get a quicker response time. The slight flip side to that is with external sources, and if gathered correctly and quickly, you're not getting the same opinion or the same take on things by people gathering around one water cooler. You know, they're all, you know, it's spread out a little bit more. We have different views coming into the project. So that's the only slight flip side. But I think overall, I think, BFJ is the firm that I think would probably work with us a little bit better.
Can I speak to one thing about the public engagement that
Sure.
you've made me think of? I think that BFJ is equally invested in public engagement, also stakeholder, because those are nuanced terms, right?
Right.
But I think that they're just in a different part of the process where I think they may be more ready to say, here's the input, we need input in these gaps, and then this is what we're bringing back to you as the public. Because I heard a lot of like, and then we want to see what the public thinks of this rendering, of this drawing, of these sort of master plan elements, right? So
Yeah.
I do think that they are just as invested, but at a different process point based on what we've done.
Yeah, more specialized and more
Yeah,
topic driven. Yeah.
ready to kind of bring it back.
Good. All right. So this is the joy of going last. So I would say, first of all, it's kind of a tribute to Granby that we are at this place and who our community is and who we are. We got very, very strong responses in either one of these two. And you could tell by their presentation how much they really want to be able to say that they represented Granby. That's a tribute to the work we're doing in our town. I think it's also a tribute to Abby and the committee for how we designed this process and got to this point, because we asked the right questions early. We asked the right questions in our interviews with them, and we've all kind of come to the same conclusion based on the same things that mattered, right? And again, that doesn't happen organically. We did a good job vetting through. Either one of these firms would be tremendous for us. I lean towards BFJ. I have a slight preference for them as well, for all the reasons that you guys said, and two others that I think you touched on, but for me, what it came down to, the two primary things I looked at again between when we did the interviews and tonight. One is, remember, again, I want the outline of what's this final product going to look like. And I think, as you mentioned, Marty, BFJ, to me, they both, I think, would ultimately get us there. But BFJ, to me, came closer to not only giving us a master plan that gives us some goals and objectives to move towards, but giving us something that we can relatively easy convert into the working documents. We need to review and amend our zoning code. We will probably want to adopt some architectural standards by way of example. And we probably want to incorporate some recognition and preservation of our historic values, right? And so we drilled them on them. We drilled both of those groups of those questions. And to me, I think BFJ was closer to getting us there. Also, I think BFJ at least gave me the impression that they'd be slightly more flexible as we go through this process and change the scope. And that, I don't think, is actually a knock on Dotson. It's because it's one house. I asked those questions like, okay, if we don't want the traffic stuff and instead, and that's the downside of that proposal, right? I think BFJ will have more flexibility. And I think we're going to need that flexibility because we've done a lot of work up to it, some of which is going to be very useful and some of it which is going to have to be massaged and worked out. So for all of those reasons, I think it sounds unanimous that we have a preference for BFJ, although I would commend both of the firms. Either one would do a fantastic job for us. So anybody else, anything before one other thing I was going to say, John, I almost forgot. So yeah, I don't think either one of them did a particularly good job when we drilled them on. Well, come on, that's not Granby. And you know what? Again, that's a tribute to the uniqueness of Granby. Okay, we're we're unique enough that it'd be hard to find a consultant who has represented a town that's real close to what we are, given both our values and our constraints, so. To
And
me,
oh, sorry.
yeah, to me, I think both of them didn't have the exact experience, but we're not going to find the exact experience. So,
But I do think that, again, both are fabulous, but BFJ does want to focus on the built environment reflecting Grandview's identity, and that's a big part. So I think that they're here for that identity exploration of what is Granby? Who are we?
all right, if nobody else says anything, what we would need is a motion to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we engage BFJ as our consultant to help us develop the Town Center Master Plan. We'll massage that. If that's the motion, the Board of Selectmen's action will include authorizing Abby and Mike Walsh to actually negotiate a contract.
So moved.
Second.
You good with that motion? Kathy, you got it down?
I can always watch the tape to get the.
I forgot that's being the value of the tape. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right,
So when would we be able to let them know?
When's the next lucky meetings?
October 7th.
well, so I think, well, let's discuss that. It's a good question. So I think if Abby has the time, she could let them know tomorrow that this is going to be our recommendation. Now, the caveat will be that the Board of Selectmen has to actually authorize us entering the contract. But I thought, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, we were clear with both of the respondents that that was the process.
Yeah.
We would be
Yes.
making a recommendation. So, I mean, is there any reason you wouldn't call them tomorrow?
No.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they're not watching this right now.
Maybe to be honest with you.
I was too, honestly, but then again, they can watch it in a half an hour and we wouldn't know that they were watching it, so. Okay, so you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
All right. All right, as far as action items for the next meeting, in a perfect world, you guys would have the contract negotiated and they would come to the
So I
next
was
meeting.
gonna say, they'd be
Yeah,
joining
Start
us,
mapping
right?
out next steps.
And that would probably be worthwhile if you do communicate with them in the next couple days to let them know in a perfect world, we would hope to see you
Yeah.
in our next, so they can get that
Yeah.
in the pipeline.
Yeah, and I would think what we would ask them is, now we're rolling up our sleeves, we can start with your proposed timeline, which we're now gonna rip through and totally change. The action steps from here to there, but yeah. Because again, that's one of the things that I think we're gonna need some flexibility on is both of those, because we asked them to just build schedules sort of in a vacuum. I think we have to go back with who we hire, BFJ, and say, okay, now build a schedule around our monthly meeting schedule, right? So, that's, you're going to be checking in with us because we're meeting and that's my own person. So besides getting everything in order and getting them here to kick us off on that process, is there anything else we should know as an action item?
I think it'd probably be incumbent on us to dive back to reread BFJ's proposal and the timeline so we can walk into that meeting kind of focused on what their plan is and what they're doing. So
It's a great idea.
really, and I guess just looking at the calendar, starting next meeting 23 or 30, because there's 5 Wednesdays and,
I think we said the last Wednesday of the month.
okay,
So it's 30.
that buys them some time.
Okay.
30.
Oh, we should be able to do that, yeah.
So it'd be the 30th.
If it's the 30th, because, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, John. I think if we all can commit to doing that, and as long as we're going back and rereading, it probably behoove us all to reread our charge one more time.
Sure.
As we walk into that. Okay. Anything else?
Well,
Do we know, is early voting, are they doing that here? or how that's working?
They are doing early voting in this room, but just remind me to check with Mike. But the agreement was that they're going to set it down and break it up in those meetings in this room.
Because I'm pretty sure early voting is 8 to 8.
Right.
Day.
Oh.
So that's-
No, I left it in my car. It just came from a training session.
All right, so we'll have to figure that out if we have to move locations, I guess, but we have some time. I
Yeah,
just want to,
that might be, yeah, but I think, yeah, we're going to have to look at it. We're going to have to look at it. Yeah,
The biggest constraint is reporting.
yes.
yeah. Gosh, I wish I remember. So we went back and forth over this, and because everything's new, it's possible that the messages cross paths, but they were supposed to have looked at the entire schedule when they developed the early voting schedule.
Okay.
But it's possible, because this is all new for all of us, so that we just got to
Yeah, I'll
check.
check.
If we have to go somewhere else, we have to go somewhere else. But,
So we glossed over it really quickly, but did we agree that October 30th is the next meeting?
Yeah.
That's what I wrote down.
I wrote it down, but I don't know that I heard it.
yes. Hearing no official objection, we will make sure, and it is when it's on my calendar, so I think that it's, okay. Okay. Anything else on the action items? I do not. Is Betsy a member of the public for these purposes? That's just, okay. So it doesn't look like we have any members of the public today for public session. Is there any other business? I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you. Good work.
Record.